Hi all, so I am James Mantimran. I am the Prism lead over at Trustmark, and I am joined by...
I'm Kez Gaffney, so I am the channel team lead for Northern EMEA for Barracuda. Work very closely with Trustmark and specifically James on the Prism project.
Amazing. So today what we wanted to really kind of speak about is how we kind of joined up in terms of Prism. We joined up with Barracuda, how that kind of really works for a lot of our customers. What can we give them in terms of, making better in terms of 365, making things more resilient. So what I wanted to really start with is in terms of, how did that kind of approach, as a combined approach, how did that really start? What did you see in terms of Barracuda? What did you see from Prism to kind of help our customers jointly?
I think it's a bit of a funny story really, and I can't remember how we even had the initial conversation, but when I first joined the team, we had a mutual customer, didn't we, that was quite sizable.
Yes.
And we had just finished a project to back up their 365. And when I was asking questions with the team around what that project looked like, the details that were involved, they mentioned Prism, which at the time I had no idea what it was. And I think the use of Prism with that customer was really critical for us to be able to demonstrate value, create a cost saving, and actually turn that project into a cost neutral project for them that was still delivering value. So, like I say, I can't even remember that first conversation that we had, but I remember coming in and asking, what is this tool? Show me it.
Thankfully, we obviously had the customer in the middle, which was kind of giving us both parts at the same time, because through Prism, we'd saved them, a fortune, kind of optimization around Microsoft licensing, making sure they were kind of covered from that state. But at the same time, they were obviously taking the Barracuda cloud-to-cloud backup solution to make sure everything was kind of backed up and resilient from that kind of side of things as well. So it really kind of worked in terms of how we wanted to do it. And as we kind of dug into it, and I can remember we had a lot of calls about this to start ourselves off with. We kind of dug into it quite a lot to kind of work out how that actually then hang together. Because it turns out those messaging was probably more aligned than we actually probably realised to start with.
Yeah, I think for me, when we kind of first looked at the Prism dashboards and the tool that you'd built, the service that you'd built, it was really interesting because you hear from customers so often the key challenges around budget, around visibility. You make all these investments, but like knowing what you have.
Yes.
And are you getting the most out of it? And are you using it all correctly is a real challenge, I think, especially when it comes to licensing.
Yeah.
And the fact that obviously we don't charge for levers is kind of the key piece that drove our integration forward, right?
Massively, yes.
And when we look at the numbers and how we can get the intelligence from Prism, deploy that backup, and then generate that cost saving for customers to then go and reallocate that budget or reallocate those licenses, is quite unique, right? And there's so many customers that have a really long list of projects that they would love to do.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, there's so many tools out there that kind of start to kind of look into, and I've said this to customers, here's all these 1,000 reports that they all say and talks about inactivity and usage and things like that. Prism is quite direct in telling, where you then have gaps, where you have usage issues, where you have, go back to your point, where you have issues on the kind of joiners, movers, levers process.
Yeah.
This is something obviously every single customer has a problem with, whether they admit it or not. They exactly have a problem with it. So the messaging, how that combines within the Barracuda piece, again, because you don't charge for levers, it means we can then go through that joiners, movers, levers process really quickly. I mean, there's so many customers out there who then just sit with a license attached to a user because literally scared of kind of removing that license because then their data might just be gone.
Right?
Yeah.
They need to keep that data to be compliant, but don't necessarily realise that there's alternative routes to keep that data.
Yes.
And pay less.
It suddenly becomes a very costly retention policy. It's like, I've done this tick of I'm retaining this data, which means I'm also then spending a fortune on all these extra licenses, which I don't need, and Microsoft don't need that at the same time as well. So, it means we can get to that point where we are making sure we're kind of optimizing the customer's estate, but at the same time, giving them so much more in terms of the whole kind of backup solution at the same time as well. It just makes it work from that kind of point of view.
100%. What you've done with Prism is really exciting, right? You're obviously starting to expand into the security space, which very much aligns with Barracuda. We are a cyber platform. So I think I'm really excited for us to kind of build that out and see where we can further integrate and give visibility around security for customers and how to make sure that their Microsoft estate is at minimal risk of a breach because
Exactly.
we see targeted attacks on Microsoft accounts all the time. It's
I can certainly imagine. I mean, obviously with, E5 licensing and things like those, there's a lot of complexity to those E5 as it stands. There's, as we build out the Prism security package, there's so many different components then pop up. You have access to this and this and this and this.
And are you using it?
Are you using it? Do you even know it existed to start with? Yeah, part of Prism for security piece literally just shows our customers, like, here's all these components you have access to. Here's what all these users have access to. Have you enabled them all? Have you set up that configuration? Have you managed that? And again, as we're going to get to that point where you're then enabling all this config, have all these extra components in your in your environment, in your tenant, again, that becomes then another piece in terms of how it kind of aligns with Barracuda, because you then have all these kind of enter IDs and bits and pieces holding together. But if you're not looking after that, then that is initially just as much a risk as the other bits before. So,
and I think that's a really common misconception, right? When Active Directory was on premise and it was on a server, everyone would back it up. But I think sometimes the cloud's great, but sometimes it's out of sight, out of mind.
I do not miss walking around with tapes.
100%.
Bag full of tapes.
Whereas now that we can back up Enter ID, it means that not only is your 365 estate protected, but actually your identity piece, right?
Yeah.
And all of the configurations that you have for your users to be able to access and where they can access it from.
100%.
That's critical for business function, right?
It's just so much more involved in kind of making sure those enter IDs actually, configure kind of correctly, and have all that config around them, especially with more security policies related to them as well, MFA and kind of services on there as well. More and more stuff going naturally into the cloud, especially as we can start to consider, access to things like Copilot and AI and all those different areas as well. There's a lot of config involved in making sure all these users are managed, backed up, optimized, and all these kind of different pieces as well. So in terms of how it works, Prism with Barracuda is the perfect combination.
Saying it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I can. That's the bit we do remember. We can remember having the initial conversation part of them. That makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. Why?
How do we go out and repeat it?
Yeah. Why are people not doing this everywhere? Because they 100% should do. And thankfully, they are now starting to do that as well, which is really good. So that's exactly kind of where we want to be from that kind of point of view, because, Prism naturally is ever expanding, as you say. So, there's more and more kind of stuff coming in every single day in terms of what we'd work with customers, what data we present, and all those kind of different areas. And naturally, and everything kind of then revolves around the security, that governance side of things as well. So, it's not just the backup, it's not just the Enter ID backup in terms of Barracuda's kind of offerings that you obviously have and how it works with Prism. There's more and more tenant stuff to consider in there as well. So, obviously, Barracuda offers loads more, cyber solutions and things like that as well, which obviously, again, integrate with all Microsoft's kind of stack as well. So, there is endless possibility in terms of how this kind of partnership between Prism and Barracuda really works for our customers.
So I guess if we talk about the catalyst for all of this, that mutual customer of ours,
yes,
their biggest challenge was the significant cost that they were looking at for the Microsoft renewal, right?
That's right. Yeah,
because such a large chunk of that renewal was for users that didn't work at the business anymore.
Literally, I like it.
When you're paying for somebody that's not there.
It's what a great way to waste some money by just having some licenses sat there doing nothing. Again, just to have backup a user and things like that. It's like, I'm going to use all these nice expensive Microsoft licenses I have over here, which gives them tons of functionality, just so I don't lose this little bit of data over here.
Well, this was it, but because of the industry they were in, they had to keep that data to be compliant, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we were working on that project with them, and luckily we were able to use the insights from Prism and see what those kind of levers, figures looked like. And it was really interesting because we were able to quantify what the cost of that renewal was going to be for those licenses versus what the cost of backing them up with Barracuda would have been.
Yeah, of course.
And it worked out cost neutral.
Which is amazing, isn't it, really?
100%.
What more could you actually need at that point? If you literally here's a whole other solution which solves a problem, fixes another problem, but it's not actually going to cost you any more than you have already.
Yeah.
especially when you kind of consider things like IT budgets, things like those. A lot of budgets out there, spend kind of IT departments, they are kind of a case of use it or lose it. They're pretty much in that state. If you're not going to use it at this point, it's going to go off on something else. That's just the way of the world. But if we can use those IT budget again on something else, which is going to be the more thing we actually need, again, rather than sitting on that kind of wasted pot of stuff we don't need, exactly, we're getting more money, more value out of what we've paid already.
But I think it's that cost reallocation piece, right? So whether it's Copilot, whether it's areas of the Barricade One platform and cyber that you want to focus on, how often are we able to just free up a significant chunk of budget? It's difficult to do, right?
That whole optimize, reinvest, that message in terms of what we can do with customers, that is massively the way. We can make them more resilient. We can do all those kind of things by, again, not costing them any more money, but showing them how they can actually use what they have better. Who doesn't want to do that?
No brainer.
Literal no brainer at that point. And that's exactly how it works. That is us. That is how Prism Barricade is. It is a no brainer. Hence why we can't remember it, because it's so simple and such a no brainer.
Prism really allows us to be able to show value for customers. It's not just an investment that they're going to make and is going to tick along in the background and they'll never see the return, right? That visibility, the insights that you're able to give through the platform is really unique and it's exciting.
That's it. It's not just an optimization thing anymore. It is, customers want to see value out of their investment. So it's a value platform, essentially. It's there to kind of give and show customers value. What are they doing in terms of, all that kind of investment they're making? How do they get more value out of what they've bought? How do they get more value in terms of what they're configuring? 100%. Because Prism is a solution there which is really there to give a lot of value to our customers. It's really there to kind of help, optimize as one kind of point, as we've kind of discussed, but really there to kind of give you value on pretty much everything. We're kind of really dubbing it as like a value intelligence platform, which sounds very posh in terms of what it does, but in terms of, literally kind of putting it into a customer's tenant means we can help them through things like their 365, their Azure, their Copilot, their security, and more things as more things can obviously crop up. But things like that means we can help our customers with loads of stuff. 365, as we've kind of spoken about, managing your joiners, movers, leavers process, making sure you're getting all that value out of your licenses, as there are just so many different components of those different licenses. Copilot being one. Prism for Copilot in that sense is quite unique because we can actually track Copilot at a user level, it's really great, and customers kind of feedback, I can then see how my Copilot adoption is doing this area. Again, let's reinvest some of that kind of side of things into Copilot, seeing what they're doing. Naturally, that links into whole security and governance piece in there as well, in terms of how we manage all those. We have the kind of Azure side of things. So naturally, loads of different things we obviously need to consider from Azure point of view, infrastructure, but it's not just infrastructure anymore. There is so much in Azure these days in terms of how we manage and track all that cost management and those side of things as well. Naturally, all needs to be secure, funnily enough. So lots of different things in there. And of course, the Prism for Security piece, this is just kind of the latest one that we've kind of released in that area as well. But making sure our users, our customers are getting use out of E5, making sure they're filling any gaps, doing those kind of different areas as well. Do we have Copilot users who need to kind of look at compliance and purview and those side of things as well? Just making sure we're monitored, making sure we're covered from a security point of view. Any of those, we've had some great examples from customers so far. I'll mention it because it's a good one. We put that into a customer not so long ago. E5 customer, or they thought they were E5 across the board. We then put the Prism in a customer and we found that their chief finance officer, for example, wasn't covered by E5 and didn't have all the kind of bells and whistles, all the security features, things like those.
Somebody that probably needs the security more than anyone.
Literally a very good primary example, things in terms of, how we then kind of track all that kind of coverage, things like that. So things like that, we can obviously pick up from a Prism perspective, but if they're not actively monitoring, don't have things like XDR solutions and all that kind of stuff, what do we then do in terms of helping them move forward? So again, it's not just the backup piece that links to you, it's a lot of different things we can kind of cross over. So
I think my favorite thing about the platform is it does so much and it holds so much data, but it's quite simple
Yes.
to visually.
Literally, yeah.
It's not overwhelming. And if we look at like the Barracuda dashboard that
Yep.
you've built within the platform, essentially what we're doing is looking at that movers, leavers, joiners data. We're looking at roughly how many licenses are inactive but are being charged for.
Yep.
We're looking at an approximate cost to back all of those licenses up, and we're summarizing what the potential cost saving is.
Yeah.
So you've taken something that can be really complex to ingest if you were just trying to look at all of that data yourself.
Yeah.
And you've consolidated it into dashboards that are, they simplify it, right?
So friendly to look at.
Yeah.
Technophobe friendly.
Yeah.
That's literally what it is, yeah. Because again, it's not just the IT admins of the world these days. It's project managers, it's finance teams, all those kind of different users that wouldn't necessarily use all the portals that are there today.
Yeah.
Or they wouldn't want to,
Yeah.
things like that. But again, they still need some of that insights, need some of that information, whether it's driving certain projects in certain ways or, just literally managing costs. So if you have something that's there, visible straight to you,
Yeah.
that's the way to do it. And like I said at the start, all these kind of other areas and things we've seen, competitor products out there, there are a lot of them kind of talk around, I've got 1,000 reports I can show you. Here's all these different views I can show you.
Who has the time to go through 1,000 reports?
I use this analogy with customers all the time. It's like I use the Netflix analogy.
Mhm.
You think about Netflix. Netflix has about 1 million films, 1 million TV shows.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to watch all those, not a chance. But you'll probably watch something from the top 10.
Yeah.
Or you'll watch a recommendation from a friend.
Yeah.
Prism is your recommendation from a friend. There you go. That's how we're working. So, you can literally kind of put it in, see that information really quickly, because we're then going to actually show you the insights we want you to, action takes actually see. So
Yeah.
that's the way to go.
So what made you build Prism in the first place?
So originally my background was a lot of kind of working in the NHS. So I worked in the NHS, worked a lot in IT, involved with a lot of different moving parts around IT, where it's going to be servers, desktops, users, things like those. I moved over to Trustmark because at the end of my kind of career in the NHS, I picked up the wonderful world of licensing. So I was that person that accidentally stepped forward and everyone else stepped back. So the world of licensing, is obviously, like we've covered, is complex. There's a lot of kind of moving parts in there in terms of getting the value out of everything.
Yeah.
So I originally built Prism to make my life easier. That's originally how it started, to make it so I could deliver a lot of these insights to customers, make things easier.
Yeah.
Obviously, since then, it has
grown.
grown a few branches, hit different places. So yeah, it's really expanded quite a lot, obviously, to give our customers value as well. So that's kind of how it started, to make it give more value in a lot of places, building it with things like the community as well. So the community in terms of, not just our customers at the time, wider community through various different methods, through LinkedIn and all those kind of different areas as well.
Mhm.
A lot of them fed into what they wanted to see as well.
Yeah.
So, a lot of those dashboards have then been built off sheer pain, I would say.
Yeah.
Being able to then, again, having something more focused, getting to that point, so we could then actually then provide those insights to customers much quicker, much easier, because it's something they actually wanted to see, rather than something being created for the sake of being created, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So that's what's kept it focused. That's what's kind of worked in that sense. So, and that's what it'll continue to be. So
I love that you've created it with a user experience first, right? Because you've lived through the pain yourself.
I was born a product manager, it seems, from somewhere along the line. So yeah, user experience is definitely the way, but that's keeps me happy.
So if a customer hears about this and is interested, where do they start? How do they find out more about Prism?
Yeah, no, that's no problem at all. So in terms of Prism and joint Barracuda, what we have done in the past naturally is we've had joint POCs, because we can do a proof of concept around the whole Prism platform, making sure they're optimized, they're getting the value out of their license side of things. But at the same time, we can obviously do the proof of concept in terms of your side, in terms of what we've done in the past around the backup solution, Enter ID, kind of making sure the customers are then really kind of covered from everything. We can make sure they're kind of getting to that almost like that cost neutral point if we can do in terms of optimization.
Yeah.
But it means they're just proof of concept in a packaged solution that kind of fits all the boxes in terms of exactly what they need. So yeah, let's get a proof of concept booked. We can do demos, everything we need to do, demo the lot, proof of concept the lot.
Go through the analysis on cost saving.
Happy days.
Absolutely.